Again, I'm Katie Malloy with Randstad Sourceright, the largest recruiting firm in the world, we're very proud to say. And today we're going to be talking about creating meaningful work in the modern workplace, it'll be an interesting conversation because we've had a little debate about what both of those items mean. First, what is meaningful work and what is the modern workplace? I wonder if we could shut that door part way because that hallway noise gets a little loud. I'm going to ask my panelists to do just a brief introduction with name and company, if you wouldn't mind, Craig.
Sure. My name is Craig Driscoll. I'm a partner at Highland Capital Partners. We're a venture capital firm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and Palo Alto.
Thanks, Craig.
Yeah, and I'm Matt Bingham. I'm a founder and head of product at an early stage startup out of Salt Lake City called Neatwork.
My name is Yoav Gary. I'm a president of Selina, which is a hospitality platform that's started in Central America and is now growing into the US and Europe.
And I think we'll be talking a little bit more about what each of these gentlemen does in their careers and how it really impacts the modern workplace and what that looks like. I'm going to start with the first question, and I'm going to direct this one to Yoav, if you don't mind.
Okay.
It is, how would you define the modern workplace?
That's the big question, right?
That's the big question, yeah. I'll have each of you cover that one if you don't mind.
So let me just tell you a little bit about Selina because it's going to, I think, filter into a lot of what I'm talking about. So Selina it's a hospitality platform. We've got everything from hostel rooms to private hotel rooms. But in addition to that, we've got food and beverage and we've got co-working in all of our locations. So the whole idea is that we're creating a platform for living, eating, playing, but also working. And a lot of hotel companies have started to create either Wi-Fi in the lobby or small co-working spaces. We're really building our platform around the digital nomad and around co-working. So from our perspective, the modern workplace is really everywhere. The whole idea is that we're capturing travelers, we're capturing travelers that are traveling and want to work along the way. And we're capturing workers who decide to give up their office space, whether it's co-working space or regular office space in the city, and just travel the world. So from our perspective, it's anywhere you want to be, and we want to create that platform for people to go out and explore the world while working at the same time.
Great, great. And how about technology in defining that modern workplace? What would that look like? Would you like to touch on that?
Yeah, that's
Matt?
true. I think that's huge, and I suppose that kind of its genesis, technology is responsible for all this, right? Every company, in some way, is a technology company today, and that's really put a emphasis on the speed at which businesses move, right? If you're not disrupting, you're being disrupted, and that's just the landscape now. And you combine like this urgency of companies to move and innovate very, very quickly with a talent shortage, right? And you've got a buyer's market, right, for a talent. And so I think, I've spent a lot of time thinking about the talent management space and working in it, and kind of those old paradigms just aren't working anymore. The way we thought about just getting people in to work at a company and paying them handsomely. No, people want different things and a different balance out of their life today. And I think that's really representative of a modern workforce or workplace.
Mm-hmm. And how would you define the modern workplace?
Yeah, so I'd probably do what Yoav just did and just sort of take a step back. So we're an early stage venture capital firm, and so we're investing in big transformational ideas and companies. We're investors in things like Rent the Runway and Harry's and Freshly, Trilogy Education, which we sold this morning to 2U, which was a great outcome for a great team. And so when I think about future of work, we have several investments in the category. We have a company called Remote Year, which plays in a similar space to Selina, where basically people can work and travel abroad for 4 months or a year, which is really just completely transformational. And that company is fully distributed. Like, we don't have a headquarters, which is pretty progressive. And then we have a company called Catalent, which is, they're actually talking tomorrow, which is much more of a talent marketplace, allowing 65,000 freelancers to basically do corporate work for any company. These are some of the bigger ideas that I see in sort of the future of work. I'm super excited about it personally. I think we're just at the sort of tip of the iceberg of what's happening and what's going to change. And companies like what these guys are starting are just, further sort of taking that trend and bringing it forward into the next generation, which is exciting.
Great. And in the company I work with, Randstad Sourceright, we've been working from home in a remote workforce for many years now. I've worked for other companies in between. I left Randstad, went somewhere else, and they were very much anti-work from home. They felt like you had to be sitting in that cubicle or that office in order to be productive. And I see somebody nodding no. I totally agree with you. I wake up and I am on that computer within about 15 minutes of my eyes opening versus having to, God forbid, shower, put on makeup, do my hair, get in the car, do all those things that take an hour and a half in the morning, plus the commute. It's a much more productive way to do work. So it's not quite as exciting as what we're talking about with these gentlemen with going off to, I call it surf camp with Selina, where you can go to a resort where in the evenings when you're done working, you can do a surfing gig or anything that appeals to you, and including giving back to the communities and the countries in which you live. So ours is a little calmer, not quite as exciting, but compared to those who are put into a cubicle every day, I think it's pretty exciting. I like having a dog next to my feet at home and being able to take a walk in my neighborhood and get my mail if I want to and walk back in the house. It's just a different lifestyle. So continuing down this path, what about the generational workforce changes happening? What's happening that directly impacts today's modern workplace with the generations in the workplace? You want to take that one, Matt?
Yeah, I can start off with that. I've almost had a little bit of a pet peeve about like questions like this, because so often we focus just on like the millennial problem or challenge or whatever it is.
Problem.
Yeah, no, I mean that's what it is, right?
Not a problem.
See, like those are, and the last company I worked at, like that's what the marketing people put out. And I'm like, stop doing that. They said that's the only thing people click on Facebook or on LinkedIn, right? So we like to kind of have that title around that. But I said that to a couple years ago to a company I was talking to. I asked about like how they were managing millennial talent. She's like, first of all, I am a millennial, and that question's kind of offensive. But as you start to dig into that, it's not just this. There's this kind of millennial challenge. It's for the first time ever we've had 5 different generations inside of the workforce. And not to even, further classify people, but it's sort of just this awakening that you have to come up with different strategies to engage like different types of employees. So this kind of broad stroke, kind of one size fits all approach that we've used in the past isn't working. You got to find unique ways to engage your talent base.
And what do we think the younger generations are looking for in the workplace today that maybe me as a Gen X wasn't as interested in the past? What do you think that is?
Well, I mean, I'd go back to just some examples. I look at what Catalent's doing and allowing people to freelance. I mean, the Fortune 100 are adopting these strategies. So there's what the younger, newer workers want to do, and then there's what companies realize is a more cost-effective strategy around talent. And I see this progressing even further, where large companies are going to have, that have 150,000 or 200,000 employees are going to say, you know what, we really only need half of that as a core employee base, and we're going to throttle our talent with this on-demand talent marketplaces. So this stuff is coming. It's coming bottoms up. It's coming top down. I think it's really exciting. It's also a little scary that there may not be the sort of large employers that just sort of lifetime employment's gone, obviously, but even companies are starting to shift faster and faster. But I think it's a really exciting trend if you're able to maintain your skills. People talk about the 60-year curriculum. People are going to have to constantly retrain themselves for these dynamic workforces, and I think that's a huge opportunity.
And I like the way you said the millennial problem. We do talk about millennials. It's really, I sort of refer to as millennials and everybody who wants to be a millennial, because there's sort of this aura around they're just about experience and enjoying life, and they make money so they can go travel. And I'm far from being a millennial, but I wish I could go back and do that myself. And I think there is, forget the word millennial, I think the idea through technology and everything that's happening in terms of people freelancing, people are able to make money while on the road. You don't need an office space anymore. And it's nice to have the dog at your feet for sure, but you just don't need it. You just don't need that physical space anymore. And so I view it as anybody from 20-year-old to whatever year old, the ability to travel, whether within your city or your country or the world, that's where it's all heading at the end of the day. Obviously, eventually people get married and they settle down, they're going to have to, but even that is taking longer and longer. People are not taking mortgages, people are not getting married at the earlier ages they used to, and it extends the lifespan of traveling and experiencing the planet. So that's the way we look at it.
Yeah, I'd challenge that a little bit, right? To say that I don't know that it's associated just to like a younger workforce. I mean, I think it is just that diversity of opportunities we offer our employees. I mean, I started my career as an engineer, still work closely with them, and I've known so many engineers that are just they cling to stability, right? They don't want that change. Like they want to work hard and kind of grind it out.
Yeah.
And so I think it is like the right strategy is finding the right set of options.
Right, and it wouldn't work if everybody wanted the Selina lifestyle, right? It wouldn't work.
I think it's very well put there. There's always look, doctors are going to need to be in hospitals mostly. You're going to need that, obviously, and there are people who are going to want to get married at the age of 20, get their job at IBM and be there for 30 years for sure. But I think the world of people that want to experience more opportunities, both in their career and in where they're physically, I think is expanding. But you're right, obviously there's always going to be a large subset that don't do that.
Again about me being right.
Yeah.
We're noticing that in our engagement surveys, and we're a large employer worldwide, that there's a lot of interest in corporate social responsibility for all levels of workers. What do you see in the future of the workplace with companies giving more back to the communities or making it available?
Yeah, one thing, we have a lot of companies, I mentioned a few, Rent the Runway and Harry's and others that make that a component of their offering, and it's really important, and it drives brand, and it drives loyalty, it drives engagement. I think there's also companies that just differentiate because what they do is so mission driven. Again, Trilogy Education, it's a New York-based company. We're constantly in a war for talent, but we would win, 10 times out of 10 because people were motivated by the mission of what we were doing, of educating and helping adult learners who weren't part of the digital economy enter the digital economy. So I think it's increasingly important. I think the savvy companies are realizing that they have to embrace this themselves because it allows you to be more successful at the corporate level.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I've worked for really, really big companies and really small companies, obviously. And one of the things when I joined NeatWork, we talked a little bit about what we wanted to build from a product perspective, but then we spent a lot of time just talking about like the type of company that we wanted to build, right? And I think we're just like at this new kind of age where people are much more socially conscious aware on a global level. And so there's always going to be, I think, that element of that like capitalistic element of big companies want to take advantage of this to attract the right talent. But I think more and more the shift that's really happening is people are just more aware of these issues. They're figuring out how to do the right thing in the world and in their lives. And you want that to carry over into your workplace. So I see it as less of like thought of as like, corporate social responsibility and like an employee benefit, and rather just being like, we all want to be good people and we spend a lot of our time at work and we should carry that into all aspects of our lives.
Is that part of the modern workplace, be a good person and do the right thing and help your community or your
I hope so.
fellow man?
Yeah, and it's sad when we have a program called Selina Gives Back where all of our employees have to give 6 hours a month at least back to their community, whether it's New York City or a beach in Panama, wherever it is. So it's sort of built in. It sounds cheesy every time we talk about it because people sometimes roll their eyes like, yeah, giving, like they just sort of sounds like a marketing ploy. But I think people are doing it because they do care. And one of our early investors is very much into impact investing, and his whole thesis now is if you invest in companies that provide impact to their local neighborhoods, forget about the money. The money will come eventually. And so he invests in companies that impact their local neighborhoods, and eventually that's where the money is made. And you figure it out along the way. And I think that a lot of our employees definitely want to join us for that reason, that we are giving back to the community, not just taking from it, for sure.
Anything to add to that as an investor? No?
Nope.
Okay. So on the topic of meaningful work, how do we help our team members do their preferred work? And when we were looking at these questions at my office, we were talking about Dan Cable's book, Alive at Work, where you answer the question, I do my best work when? How do we help people do their best work when? How do we put that out there for them? What do we...
Yeah, I'll start. No, I think that's, well, obviously, like the point of even kind of coming to this session, right, is finding meaningful work. And I think identifying that, what that even means, we've talked about maybe a couple different definitions of that. And it can be tied to kind of the corporate social responsibility pieces. But I think, you keep seeing like information and stories come out, sometimes statistical stories, sometimes just kind of op-ed pieces about the need for employees to want to make an impact at work, right? And that could mean going out and accomplishing something great and doing something great for humanity. But I think, that almost kind of overstates it, right, what people are trying to do. And ultimately, people just want to come into work every day and feel like what they're doing has an impact on the company, right? And they're doing something that matters. And I think that gets really, really lost today as you go from, early stage startup and have 100 people, and then a couple years later have a couple thousand people. Like, it's just chaos inside of there. And everyone's working really hard, everyone's really busy, but for the most part, everyone's really underutilized. And that's where people start to feel a little disconnected from work and unengaged in work. And one of the things we talk about is it shouldn't be harder to find something interesting to do at work than it is to find a new job. And I think that's just a reality of where we are today when we keep kind of struggling to show how you can make an impact inside of this building. We're just going to lose people left and right.
I mean, my frame of reference is just early stage companies, and I think to the point you were making, it's just part of the fabric. I mean, people are so motivated and excited by the impact they're having, and these companies are having impact on these industries, and it's sort of, it's just assumed that it's working out. I do think that our best companies get people in the right slots quickly and allow them to be productive. Sometimes the environment isn't right for them, and we try to sort of move them into other situations, either internally or externally, that make sense. But and I think that people, at least within the startup community, that are successful are those people that are highly resilient, and they just kind of, they're accustomed to the chaos, right?
Yeah,
they thrive in it.
Right.
They've developed those skills, and that's the world I sort of live in exclusively. So that's what I see.
Matt, I think you mentioned Agile the first time we talked.
Yeah.
We were talking about agility in the workforce and how that's a necessity that we should really screen for in most workplaces today. But something else you said made me think of something we do at work, which is finding out if people are really in the right seat. Maybe they were in the right seat when they were hired, and now 18 months have gone by and they don't really know how to get to their next step and keep their work feeling meaningful in their workplace. So within my organization, we've started surveying instead of once a year, which is a little too infrequent. Every other month, we send out about 10 questions in a survey. And when we send these questions out, my team's questions, their answers come back to me without their name. And I can write them back another question. If they say, hey, I don't feel like I understand the direction of the organization very well, I gave you a 7, then I write back and say, what could we do to improve that for you, without ever knowing who they are, so that they're very comfortable going back and forth with this invisible email and sharing what it is that they're missing. Do they have the right tools? Do they need their computer upgraded and they're afraid to ask because they know the budget's tight this quarter? Or just anything that they need to feel like they're getting their work done and being able to contribute in the best way possible. The next question I have is about the challenges associated with technology. And I think we joked about this earlier, Matt, that in my company, they keep saying the robots are coming because we are a recruiting firm and we're trying to find jobs for people. And we're picturing these robots marching down the street, taking over our jobs. And in reality, we're moving to things that are not that big of a deal, like texting or changing the way that our reports are run. We're texting candidates instead of calling them. Who picks up their phone anymore? Or instead of emailing them. I think one of you was emailing me today, and I'm thinking, I don't email, I text. Yoav, send me a text. So the robots are coming, and they are going to be taking over some of the jobs, but in reality, it's a lot more about the simple things like texting and moving the jobs to the people who are most likely to get it done well, and moving the mundane tasks over to the technology versus having the people do it. So is there a limitation with the technology that's causing problems in the modern workplace? What are you seeing? Matt, you look like you're ready to answer.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No,
I can
was
see
just
it in your
even
eyes.
thinking, like walking over to the session, like while I was standing in the hall, they kept saying that the session next door was full. There's a waiting line. I'm like, why? And I looked at who was speaking. There were some nice people, but like not a celebrity or something. And it was because they had the word AI in the title, right? And I think that, and even like I grew up in technology, right? And we want to do cutting edge things, but we keep doing this. It's like AI and machine learning, and the workplace is changing. But in reality, like people are just looking for ways to remove friction from inside of their jobs. Now, there will be some great companies that come and apply some really wonderful technical solutions. But so much of what I think what we need to think about is just how do we make the lives of people's jobs easier. Often times that means using less technology, right? And kind of backing away from what is definitely an overabundance of tools, or at least finding really great ways to bring them together so that people don't spend most of their day like figuring out their password to multiple systems to get in, which is
anyone relate to that one? Password changing all day, yeah.
Yeah, but it is, and sorry not to, it was just kind of triggered. I was meeting with the CIO at, it was like a essential oil type of company the other day, and he was talking about how he embraced innovation on his team, and he just started listing like the buzzwords. He's like, well, yeah, we asked all the team and we had this hack day, not even a week, and they brought back these great solutions around machine learning and
analytics.
Yeah, and blockchain and all this stuff. And we're really overutilizing those words, I think, as an industry, especially in the talent space right now. And we all just got to get back to like that more kind of how can we utilize technology to facilitate more human connections.
It's funny because our entire business model, if you look at our mission statement, it's all about allowing people to connect with each other, whether it's personally, socially, or personally at work, or personally eating and playing. There is too much going on online, and people have lost that human contact. What's weird is that at the same time, we're targeting digital nomads. So one respect, we want people to travel and get away from the office. In another respect, we want to give them the ability to meet others around the world. So it's a little bit of both in our mind. But I do agree that it's both sides of it. Technology allows us to travel and work remotely as much as possible. I mean, you could do it anywhere. At the same time, there is too much technology. There are too many emails. There is too much of getting up and 15 minutes later, you're on your computer. So even though we're really spread out as a company, we use Zoom a lot. We really sort of push people, stop with the 20 email chains. If there's a question that gets asked and there's 10 people on it, just get a quick phone call together. Put a Zoom link together. You can at least see each other, answer the question in 20, 30 minutes, and move on, rather than take 3 days of email trails, to answer those questions.
Yeah.
But so I think technology definitely allows all this, that enables everything we're talking about doing, but it does disconnect people eventually, and you need to bring them at some place. You need to get them back into a room to talk to each other, which is tough.
Anything to add to that, Craig? Or
Nope.
any thought on
This is great.
technology?
I thought you were going to tell us you invested in Zoom. I guess I'd be really
No,
happy.
that would have been great.
Well, Craig, I wanted to ask you about the future trends in the workplace. So what are the other sectors that are being affected, and what are you thinking the future is going to look like?
Yeah, so I think a couple interesting, just random observations. So it's interesting, again, with Yoav here, I see future of work in real estate being a pretty interesting kind of morphing. We've seen, obviously, WeWork and Airbnb that have sort of come on and transformed some industries, and now we've got Catalent and Trilogy and a whole bunch of great companies that are here. I think that some of those trends are still coming crashing together, which is pretty exciting. So I just led an investment in a company called Y Hotel, like why would I stay in a hotel, not the letter Y. And it's basically taking brand new luxury apartment buildings and popping up a hotel in those while they're basically empty and being leased up. And it's just it makes so much sense. And you think about who we're targeting there. We're targeting business and family travelers who think about their housing differently now. They don't want to stay in a crummy hotel that's the same old product that's been in this country for the last 100 years. And those same workers are the workers that are, thinking about working remotely, thinking about traveling and working abroad, thinking about leveraging technology. So we also see health and wellness as a great, exciting area that's sort of on the other side of like millennials, for example. Like 74% of them identify as being lonely. It's just this remarkable statistic that has huge implications to the healthcare system, has huge implications to the sorts of services that you provide. So I just think that there's some we look for these big categories that haven't been transformed yet. We talk about Freshly with food, we talk about Rent the Runway with apparel, Y Hotel with multifamily, Trilogy Education and education. It's like these big categories that just haven't changed and are ripe for disruption. That's where we're most excited.
Interesting. Anything to add?
Yeah,
for
look,
the future?
I think that, and maybe we exaggerated because we're so deep into it, but I think people disconnecting from offices and from cities and from traditional work environments. And even, I mean, WeWork is a very disruptive company. What it has done to office space is tremendous over the last 5, 6, 7 years. But we even see it as a step beyond that. You don't need that desk in New York City for 12 months. You can actually get that desk on a beach in Panama or in Shanghai or in London and just travel around, whether it's with a company like Remote Year or Selina, or there's other types of companies out there doing this. But I think that, and we were talking about this outside, that there will always be Goldman Sachs with a 200,000 square foot office building and thousands of employees in suits doing their thing. But to entice them to come out of business school and work for you, and to entice them to stay, it's going to be less about money. It's going to be more about the freedom. And it's about, listen, come work for us for 10 months in an office space, do your thing. And for 2 months a year, go travel. Take your laptop, take your phone with you, go travel the world, do what you want to do. I think that is an incentive for employees, whether they're millennials or however old they are. I think that's where it's all heading. People will seek those experiences as much as they seek the money and the career progression, because that's what they want in life these days.
I think I was actually inspired by kind of something you started talking about at the beginning of this, about the idea of the 60-year career, or what do they say? I mean, the first person to live to be 150 has already been born. And especially at an education conference like this, I think that's really telling, right? As the way we think about education is about to very, very quickly change, where people will go from going to all their schooling and then having their one career-ish to wanting to have 4 careers, like in a lifetime, right? And so it's kind of this new challenge to continually educate and to continually grow and explore new things. And I think one of the things we think a lot about in talking about talent management is, hey, these kind of old ideas of turning on like some courses for people to take and expecting that they're going to self-guide themselves and invent these new careers it's a little bit like asinine, right? That's not reality. So I think especially thinking about the employers, one of the best things that you're going to be able to offer your employees is those abilities to go out in the workplace and experiment and find new passions and grow into those careers as you morph over time. So maybe that's you're like the 5-year version, and that's like the 50-year version. But those are exciting things.
Yeah, we still have hiring managers who look at resumes in our world and say, he's jumped around too much. I'm not sure I want to interview this one. And we think, are we really still saying that? Right. So what do you think is holding us back from having more of this modern workplace than what we're seeing today? I mean, you're seeing a modern workplace. I bet they're not all seeing this modern workplace. They're not even working from home. They're looking at me going, how do I work from home? Find me a job. What do you think is holding us back? Who or what? Is it the technology is too difficult for companies? Do they want to see them in their work? Do they not believe they're working if they can't see them working?
There's not a person that we have an office in New York in Tribeca. There's not a person that comes to our office that doesn't say, wow, I'd love to work in this office space, because it's interesting. Okay. And we have people there that are there 2 days a week, 5 days a week, 0 days a week. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. It's a great question. I don't know why it hasn't already completely taken over the planet.
Is it eBay? What, the eBay lady's the one who let them work from home and then made them all come back into the office? Wasn't that a few years ago?
Yahoo, yeah.
Oh, it was Yahoo? Sorry, eBay. Yahoo.
Look, I think you need to create. It's what I was trying to say before, that we are built around people being outside of the workplace, but you still need people to connect. But if you offer them the technology that allows them to connect, and you offer them some physical spaces where they can connect, it doesn't have to be the single office. It can be 100 locations around the planet. You do have to build yourself toward that goal. But I don't have an answer. It's something that it's surprising to me where I sit. I mean, I worked for some traditional companies. I won't name names. And I go back and I visit my friends, and they're perfectly content. And I just don't understand how they can go back to that office every single day. It's crazy.
They don't know any better?
Yeah.
Is that what's holding us back?
They
don't know any better? They don't know
or-
any other lifestyle?
And they've read about millennials and they get it, but it's sort of this amorphous thing. But their kids are all going to college. Their kids are getting out of college, and they're going to want to be doing that. They're going to be experiencing it soon, I think, with their kids and their families.
Any other ideas?
I think we're just at the beginning of the transition still, right? And it's sort of gaining momentum. I mean, it used to just be like, we would talk about these things as a San Francisco, like Bay Area company only, and that's quickly spreading. I mean, it was a couple of years ago we talked about the annual performance review is dead, right? That was the big headline, but it was just in Bay Area companies, but then it was everywhere, right? So it's kind of just critical mass is growing, and everyone's kind of just coming accustomed to these kind of these new ways of doing things, but there are holdouts, right? And those are the companies that are probably going to go away in the next couple of years or learn how to adapt and learn how to survive.
It's a good point, and I was just going to add to that we no longer have performance reviews. It's not an annual event. We do a great conversation every quarter, and we give feedback and get feedback and create plans, and then there's a merit increase, but it has nothing to do with a performance evaluation. Of course, it's related, but it's not tied together. Something to add, Craig?
No, I think I'm good. I'd be curious if anyone has questions about what we're talking about.
What didn't we answer for you if we have a couple more minutes? Do we have a couple more minutes? 3, great. What didn't we answer that you were hoping to get out of this session today that you'd like us to talk about? Anybody? Yes.
Thank you for the panel. I thought it was a really interesting conversation. I work for a nonprofit organization. We actually have our staff that telecommutes 2 days a week. And one of the things that we struggle with is we're really growing a lot, but we keep looking for more space because what if they all want to be there on the same day? So this notion of hoteling is a complicated puzzle to figure out, and I'm just wondering how you guys looked at that. Obviously through software tools, but that's quite a challenge to find the right one. So I'd love your insights.
Hoteling specifically or co-working space?
Hoteling, probably, sharing cube spaces.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure Yoav has the strongest opinions about this, but I mean, we see so much activity in the co-working space. It's the stratification from, there's high-end, more luxury sort of co-working alternatives. There's more sort of trying to drive down the unit economics for others and everything in between. So I think most cities, have multiple options. So it seems to me to be a pretty well-developed area, but I don't know if see other alternatives out there that are compelling.
To find space when their team is coming together. I don't know if everybody heard the question.
And look, there are so many. It was just WeWork and a few, small competitors. I think there are so many others out there, down to the point of, there are companies out there that will take restaurant space during the day that's unused and just use that. But it's a great solution because it's inexpensive. You can fill it up very quickly and use it on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week basis, rather than renting out space for a month at a time. But those are out there, and I mean, I think the restaurant guys and the guys that take up unused meeting space as well, because there's so much meeting space that's been built up in these office buildings, and there's companies that will come in and just take an entire floor of meeting space and use it for a day or a week or a month. Very inexpensive for you. The company's making money because otherwise that meeting space is unused, but you don't have to subscribe for even a month. It's a day-to-day, hour-to-hour thing.
Right, so there's Spacious, Breather, Convene, are 3 I know that do that.
Yeah, and then I think, just to add on to that, same thing, even at our kind of smaller company, I mean, people enjoy coming together even though we're kind of in an increasingly remote world because they enjoy the collaboration of it, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things we try and do, and we've got enough space for everyone right now, but we won't soon, is to almost, as silly as it sounds, systematize the collaboration, right? And find those moments where we can come together wherever it is to collaborate and then let people go off and kind of do their work.
Yeah, we should have a system like Elance where our freelancers go to work, where you can review the freelancer and the freelancer reviews you as an employer. to have this for these workspaces where people say, I used it and here's what was good, and almost a Yelp review kind of setting of all the different possibilities. Can you create that for us, Yoav?
Yeah. By tomorrow afternoon, sure. No
On
problem.
your side, yeah. Well, I think we're over time. I know there were other questions, so you can just approach us and we'd be happy to chat with you. But thank you all for coming today. Appreciate you. Thank you.